Tonight, the face of a carjacking crash tragedy, tributes for a grandmother killed at Marumba Downs. The accused teen in court, but media banned as shocking new details emerge, the Premier's vow. A loud bang, then fire. Engine failure on a Brisbane-bound jet sparks a major emergency. High humidity only adding to Queensland's heatwave, the latest health warnings. Holidaymakers stranded, passports taken, the Aussies stuck on a cruise ship in Japan, and a celebrity guest list for Brisbane's Supernova ComicCon.
Live from Brisbane, 7 News with Sarah Greenhalgh.
Good evening. A much-loved grandmother who cherished her family above all else is the latest victim of youth crime in this state. 69-year-old Rosemary Franzidis was allegedly killed by an armed teenage car thief. A Brisbane magistrate today kept his court appearance a closed-door affair.
An adored wife, mother and grandmother, Rosemary Franzidis cherished her family more than anything.
And it's absolutely wonderful. You can just enjoy your life.
A time with them cut short, allegedly by a 16-year-old boy behind the wheel of a stolen car.
It does affect the whole community.
Police say the teen and his mates hijacked the owner of the blue Audi just 15 minutes earlier. This fresh video shows them hunting down their new set of wheels in an orange hatch.
You could hear them, they were coming and they were flying. They went around the corner and they were tailgating and they were taken off.
Ron Schmidt and his wife were the first to help the carjacking victim, an art student just trying to make it to class.
All happened so quick. They jumped in their car and away they went. And the car was gone. The lady was sitting down almost crying and very distressed, so my wife went over and walked her into her house, made her a cup of coffee.
As they were consoling her, the woman's car was involved in the crash that claimed Rosemary's life. At that intersection, a memorial is growing. Strangers who didn't even know the 69-year-old are grieving in fear and furious.
There's no boundaries, no one's safe in a community.
People are angry.
Especially given the circumstances that led up to this moment. Earlier in the day, the teenage group allegedly attempted a carjacking at Rothwell train station, where they threatened a woman with a gun as they unsuccessfully tried to steal her handbag. An hour and a half later, the teens allegedly stole that Audi at Dolly's Rocks Road at Griffin. The Premier today doubling down on his commitment, promising sweeping changes to the Youth Justice Act before the year's end.
That family is owed answers and we intend to give them the answers they deserve. Work is underway drafting these laws. They will be introduced in the first sitting of the Parliament. They will be passed before Christmas and they will be law.
Today, new laws designed to open the courts to the media were tested, a magistrate denying reporters' entry to the teenager's appearance.
If you want to see justice being done, it has to be visibly seen to be done.
Newly elected MP Russell Field knows this pain all too well. After losing his son Matthew, daughter-in-law Kate, and unborn grandson Miles in heartbreakingly similar circumstances.
We know what it's like, victims know what it's like. And all I can say is it's a hard task. It will continue, that grieving will continue for a long time.
Rosemary is survived by her husband of 50 years, 3 daughters and 3 grandchildren. Remembered as a kind, generous woman of faith with church friends across the globe. Faith that's being tested, with another family suffering an unfathomable loss. In fresh developments, that stolen orange Barina was tracked to Kawangba this afternoon. It was found in Bushland just after 1 p.m, around 300 metres off Browns Road. It's unclear when that car was dumped. Its licence plates had been removed and it's been towed away for forensic testing. Sarah, police are still looking for the people who were in that car.
Jordan Bissell there in Marumba Downs. Let's bring in Anna McGraw now in studio. Anna, you were in court today covering this case. Why were you kicked down?
Well, Sarah, media argued in the case of public interest and open justice, but the 16-year-old's lawyer wanted us to be excluded to make sure his identity was protected. However, there are already strict laws in place, meaning we cannot identify any children before court. When I raised the point of open justice, Magistrate Anne Thacker interjected and said we wouldn't learn anything being inside the courtroom. When I tried to raise the interests of multiple alleged victims in this case, the magistrate stopped me and said she'd already already made a decision. Now, the reason we were barred is because the boy has been in the care of child safety for 4 years with no family support. Legislation changed in September was supposed to allow for transparency, but the Premier today says it's clear more is needed.
If you want to see justice being done, it has to be visibly seen to be done. And part of our changes will involve opening up the courtroom so that Queenslanders get visibility on what happens in that justice process.
What we do know tonight is the accused teen remains behind bars and will be back in court on December 17. But Sarah will be there and will be fighting to follow this case.
And I'm sure plenty of people will be watching really closely. Thank you, Anna. There's been a major emergency at Sydney Airport when a Qantas flight bound for Brisbane suffered an engine failure on takeoff. Passengers heard a terrifying bang on board, forcing the pilot to circle and land as a fire sparked on the edge of the runway.
Touching down on what felt like a wing and a prayer.
Qantas flight 20, engine phase.
2 emergencies on the tarmac, an out-of-control fire and a plane full of frightened passengers.
There was some people really anxious.
QF 520 forced to make an emergency landing at Sydney Airport.
There's found fire, so it looks like there has been an explosion and there are bits all over the runway. Would suggest the engine is gone.
After an engine failure as it lifted off just minutes earlier.
It was on takeoff, there was a bang on the right side engine.
There was a shudder and a sort of movement and you knew the plane wasn't right.
Bound for Brisbane, the pilot of the old Boeing 737 declared an emergency with the tower and circled over Sydney before it was safe enough to get the all clear to land.
There is a point during the takeoff at which you can no longer reject that takeoff, so you are committed to getting the aircraft into the air if it isn't already airborne.
From the windows, passengers could see the chaos on the ground.
Take off there, something's come out of the engine and come through at the back, and that's set all that grass on fire.
Smothering the airport in a thick haze of smoke.
There was flames a bit from the front and flames a little bit from the back.
The airport was paralysed for 47 minutes, passengers stranded on all outbound flights.
It puts you a bit on edge when you're seeing ambulances drive past, and a big police rescue vehicle has just passed us as well.
The blaze eventually put out to everyone's relief.
Everybody just spontaneously clapped because we thought that the pilots and staff had all done a really good job in getting us back to Sydney safely.
All the credit going to the veteran flight crew who stayed cool in a crisis.
Passengers are saying you did a great job. Thank you.
The initial investigations have confirmed it was not an engine explosion, and obviously our engineers will now investigate exactly what has happened.
In the meantime, Qantas has promised to clear the backlog of delayed flights as quickly as possible.
Now hopefully we can get back to Brisbane sometime today.
Bill Hogan, 7 News.
A November record has been broken as Queensland swelters through a heatwave. Temperatures cracked 40 degrees in the northwest as emergency services warn people to stay hydrated.
As the humidity ramped up, sorbet was the best way to sweat away the day.
Berry fruit sorbet.
How does it taste?
Good.
Queensland enduring more heatwave conditions.
I was sweating all night.
Brisbane 24.4. That was actually its hottest November night since 2008.
Today, Julia Creek topped out at 44 degrees. Longreach and Winton cracked 43, Richmond 42, Emerald and Hughenden 41. Brisbane's maximum temperature barely reached 30, but in 60 to 70% humidity, it felt as hot as 33. Cloud cover shielding us from hotter daytime temperatures and hindering storm activity.
I've been very grateful for the clouds today.
Certainly don't want to walk around too long over here in the heat.
If you are really desperate to beat the heat, this might be the coldest place in Queensland. Snow Scene's cold room gets down to a chilly minus 20 degrees.
Staying in the cool, dreaming of cooler climates, the best way to stay safe.
This is not a time to be outside building retaining walls or mowing the lawn. Do that when it's cooler.
Rosanna Kingson, 7 News.
Now to Tony Auden. Tony, is there any sign of those forecast storms?
Sarah, not at the moment. It's all been pretty quiet so far today. Having said that, we do have clearer air and hotter conditions inland, which is triggering a little bit of activity well west of the ranges here. I don't think it'll be too nasty, but we could still get a couple of drops of rain on the roof overnight if the tail end of that activity gets going. Then what can we expect for the weekend, Sarah? I'll be back soon with the forecast.
See you soon, Tony. Thank you. More than 100 Australians are stuck on a broken-down cruise in Japan. They say they're being kept on board without access to their passports when all they want to do is get off the ship.
Stuck on the ship? Nowhere to go.
A holiday with an itinerary thrown overboard. Steve and Karen Demitzel are among 111 Australians stuck on Spectrum of the Seas.
It's beautiful here, but we would love to get off.
Moored in Yokohama, Japan, for what Royal Caribbean Cruises calls unplanned maintenance. It was supposed to leave here 2 days ago.
What's unplanned maintenance? It's a nice word for saying something's
broken down.
Their passports are with the crew. They're not allowed off.
They won't allow us onto the Japanese land. I mean, it's weird because in the last 16 days we've been on Japanese land on 5 different occasions.
The 7-day cruise began in Shanghai last weekend, stopping at Japanese ports Kobe, Osaka and Yokohama. It was meant to return to Shanghai tomorrow. Instead, it won't get there until Monday, 2 days late, wiping out travel plans for thousands on board.
They don't give us enough information though, and they blame Royal Caribbean, saying that it's being handled by head office, and therefore, due to US time, there's a time lapse as well.
The company offers $600 per passenger to rebook disrupted travel. The Demitzels say that won't cover their costs, but they have insurance. For now, they're in good spirits in more ways than one.
Lucky we have a bar tab.
Blake Johnson, 7 News.
In a shock move, Queensland's Chief Health Officer is quitting his government position to return to full-time clinical duties. Dr John Gerard tendered his resignation when the government was in caretaker mode. He's been in the role since December 2021, succeeding now Governor Jeanette Young. A replacement is yet to be announced. The Olympic Stadium debate has been reignited, with Queensland Cricket and the Brisbane Lions joining forces to call for a new stadium. They've penned a letter to the new Premier, who remains adamant they won't be building at Victoria Park.
Stadium stoush history repeating itself before a new government.
The CEO at the Lions, Greg Swan, and I have written to the Premier. We wrote to the Premier yesterday.
Rewriting their wish list for a brand new stadium at Victoria Park before 2032.
We're hopeful that common sense will prevail.
But the new government remains firm on no new builds.
Just to be crystal clear, so no new stadium.
We have said no new stadia, and we've also said no to Victoria Park.
Our expectations that all options are on the table.
But where athletics and the opening ceremony will be held depends on the government's review.
Queenslanders feel embarrassed about what has unfolded.
The new government has until December 1 to appoint an independent body to complete its 100-day Olympic review. They'll have until March next year to paint a clear picture of what Brisbane 2032 will look like.
It has to be done within the allocated funding of $7.1 billion.
After revealing minor venue costs have already blown out by $181 million under the Labor government.
That tender process had been underway, and this is how tender processes work.
Meanwhile, Labor's revealed its shadow cabinet. Stephen Miles remains in charge with Cameron Dick as deputy. Shannon Fentiman now treasurer, Megan Scanlon picking up Attorney General and Justice, and Mark Bailey has been reinstated as shadow Minister for Health.
This represents a strong and united team ready to hold David Crisafulli's LNP government to account.
Anna McGraw, 7 News.
US President Joe Biden is refusing to take any blame for the Democrats' election disaster, which handed Donald Trump the keys to the White House. The party he leads is now at war with itself as senior figures try to work out how to win back the American people.
In this case, when one door opens, many more close.
Thank you. Please.
Joe Biden in the White House Rose Garden addressing the stench around his Democratic Party.
It's a time of loss. I know it's a difficult time. You're hurting.
But refusing to accept any blame for the bloodbath Donald Trump inflicted on Kamala Harris.
She ran an inspiring campaign and everyone got to see something that I learned early on to respect so much.
Does the president feel any responsibility for the outcome?
The president understands that he's going to respect the will of the people.
Instead offering his own spin on things.
Together we've changed America for the better. The struggle for the soul of America, since our very founding, has always been an ongoing debate and still vital today. Setbacks are unavoidable, but giving up is unforgivable.
At his Florida mega mansion, Donald Trump is building his team and talking to world leaders. Thousands of appointments need to be made, starting with Susie Wiles, the powerhouse campaign manager who got him back to the White House and will now run it as his chief of staff, the most powerful woman in America.
The ice baby, we call her the ice baby. Susie likes to stay in the background. She's not in the background.
But no one can hide right now. Even the funniest Democrats aren't laughing anymore.
Of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare.
Well, of course, Trump's already super busy. First, he's got to move all those classified documents back into the White House.
While Joe Biden plans his exit, his legacy in tatters.
We're going to be okay, but we need to stay engaged. We need to keep going. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
His party's lost the White House, the Senate, and now more than likely the House of Representatives. Yet President Biden maintains his deputy ran a strong, diligent campaign.
That ultimately failed, and in just over 70 days, they'll both be gone. In Washington, D.C., David Woywood, 7 News.
A Dutch MP has picked a trade fight with Australia. Next, why they're banning our kangaroo products. Also, a fire emergency near homes and a school. Raising the bar, Ipswich's entertainment precinct transformed. And 100 EVs in the fast lane as Tesla meets its match. Police are hunting an arsonist accused of starting 2 fires in Bushland at Riverview this morning. They quickly spread and sparked other spot fires, burning dangerously close to homes and a school. Residents were told to stay indoors. Police were seen leaving the area with a jerry can. 3 people have been charged over the death of One Direction's Liam Payne. They're accused of supplying the singer with drugs before his fatal fall from a Buenos Aires hotel balcony last month. Prosecutors say the trio includes someone close to him, a hotel employee and a suspected drug dealer. Toxicology reports show Payne had alcohol, cocaine and an antidepressant in his system. Australia's kangaroo exports are under threat from politicians in Europe. Dutch MPs claim our national icon is treated inhumanely, sparking a furious reaction here.
An icon of Australia, the kangaroo adorns our coat of arms, our planes, and planes often in pest proportions. Shot by licensed hunters and sold to countries around the world.
While we all thought that the kangaroo is a protected Australian icon, there was a big shock for the Dutch politics and the Dutch public.
Kangaroo leather is used for football boots, the meat in pet food. But this week, Dutch MP Ines Kostic won the majority support of her parliament to ban importing the animal.
The European Union is the largest importer of kangaroo products, thus also animal cruelty.
Australia's government says there are strict controls over the commercial harvest and production of all kangaroo products that meets all European Union import requirements. Other politicians took a different view.
Who cares what a little tiny, excuse my crude language, pissing country in Europe thinks?
A ban could be introduced within a year, but this could just be the start. They want an EU-wide ban, which would mean an end to kangaroo leather being used by companies like Adidas at the heights of European football. Exports to the Netherlands are worth $1.6 million, $9.4 million across the EU, a sum now weighed against the cost to our reputation. Do ordinary Dutch residents view Australians as inhumane?
Oh yes, absolutely.
In London, Ben Downey, 7 News.
The most significant revitalisation of Ipswich's city centre in 3 decades is now complete. Nicholas Street Precinct has been transformed to include a new cinema, an upgraded hotel and other entertainment venues.
Down here in general public across the 2 levels here, we've got arcade games, 10-pin bowling, simulated golf, darts, pool, snooker, and just great food offerings.
The upgrades were first planned back in 2009. 30,000 people are expected through the doors of Brisbane's biggest pop culture and gaming expo this weekend. And Supernova ComicCon is attracting some superstars. Tonight we take you inside. Don't miss that story. Coming up soon. Also, social media age limits are a step closer tonight. Our Premier's message to the tech giants next. Peter Dutton's Queensland office under attack. A worker's terrifying close call on the side of a highway. And postcode wars. Could the Broncos dictate where players are allowed to live? An office leased by Peter Dutton has been covered in graffiti overnight. The windows, doors and brickwork were defaced with a message seemingly meant for Anthony Albanese. It references US Vice President Kamala Harris, saying she bowed to the right and moderates, going on to ask, how did that work out? It then suggests that if Labor does the same, quote, Dutton will then get the win. Police are investigating. The states have given the green light to the Albanese government's social media ban for children under 16. But tech experts and psychologists warn the plan could fail, calling for greater education for teens and their parents.
Hoping his social media ban gets the thumbs up, Anthony Albanese connects with his own online network of friends.
What we're hoping to do is to get your endorsement.
National Cabinet happy to subscribe, making 16 the new minimum age to use social media.
We support a national approach to it.
Tasmania wanted a cut-off of 14, but didn't want to stand in the way of world-first laws.
This is new ground.
Experts support a ban, but say 16 is too old, arguing 13 would be easier to implement.
This is going to be like trying to pick up mercury with a fork, trying to reel them back. It's going to be impossible.
Concerns too, the laws will be simple to sidestep.
Or using a VPN, a virtual private network that can disguise where you actually are.
Admitting the bans won't solve all the problems, Anthony Albanese says what they will do is send a social message to the social networks about what society thinks is appropriate. All the major networks will have to comply or face fines.
There's no point setting rules that aren't enforced and they aren't having adequate penalties.
There is no out for the platforms here.
YouTube Kids and some messaging services will be exempt, but online games with chat rooms might not be. The government expecting pushback.
It doesn't mean that you say, oh, well, it's all too hard, let it rip.
The tech giants say they shouldn't be responsible for keeping kids off their platforms, arguing age verification should start at the app stores. Rob Scott, 7 News.
Optus has been fined $12 million for last year's outage that left more than 2,000 customers unable to connect to 000. The communications watchdog found the telco failed to check on the well-being of hundreds of customers once services were fixed.
This is a sign for the whole industry to lift its game.
New industry standards are being developed. A highway worker in the US has cheated death when a truck came hurtling past and smashed into his vehicle. The crash happened on a New York interstate. The man wasn't physically hurt after he scrambled to safety, dodging that rampaging truck by just centimetres. There are questions tonight about the living arrangements of 3 of the Broncos' biggest stars who call the Gold Coast home. The club has reportedly raised concerns the full squad isn't united in Brisbane, but has told 7 News nobody will be forced to move.
Brisbane at heart, but the Gold Coast is home. Is it a problem? Depends who you ask.
If it's going to affect your game or your performance, no.
you should be there.
Reece Walsh is the latest Bronco to buy up on the Gold Coast, purchasing this sprawling hinterland estate in May. The superstar fullback following in the footsteps of Vice-Captain Pat Carrigan, who snapped up this Burleigh Waters home in February. His neighbour, winger Jesse Arthurs, has real estate in Burleigh and Pimpama. Undisputed Titans territory, but it's not a question of city loyalties, but if the distance divides the team.
I still remember the old days when you used to socialise together after training. So that's not going to happen if you're at the Gold Coast or the Sunshine Coast.
Apparently, it's a concern of the club's top brass. The Broncos have reportedly had internal discussions about whether the full-time squad should be based exclusively in Brisbane, raising questions about how their home in the country's party capital impacts their performance and club culture.
The club would need to show essentially that the players can't perform the inherent requirements of the role in commuting from the Gold Coast.
A move the Broncos aren't prepared to make. A spokesperson telling 7 News it is not considering asking players to relocate, adding no special treatment is given to those who live outside of Brisbane. Amanda Abate, 7 News.
A whooping cough epidemic is sweeping across the country. The warning to Queensland families is next. Superstars headline the first day of Brisbane's Supernova ComicCon. Golden tonsils, John Laws hangs up the microphone. And serious monkey business, the race to contain primates on the loose. Elaborate costumes, cartoon heroes and stars of the silver screen. Supernova has landed in Brisbane, a celebration of pop culture and the cosplayers who've made it their own.
From galaxies far, far away to Gotham City's finest.
Batman, well, you know, he's around. Usually only at night, though.
Descending on Brisbane in an explosion of cinema, games, comics and, of course, cosplay.
This is the shield. I 3D printed this. This took approximately 12 days to print.
The armour's all foam, very long build, very fun.
From the detailed...
EVA foam, gluing, heating, painting.
To the downright terrifying.
And I do not want you to follow me.
2 decades on, Supernova continues to draw a crowd from all corners of pop culture.
How's the family?
Family as well. Luke is doing really well.
30,000 people are expected at the convention centre over the weekend, where things are more than meets the eyes, and meeting childhood heroes is an everyday occurrence.
Pidgeotto, I choose you!
Ash saying, I choose you! I've gotten to see kids when they were 10, and now they've come back with their children.
It's hard to miss Mad Max star and Brisbane's own Nathan Jones.
I remember watching Mad Max, the original, when I was about 9 years old, and it scared the hell out of me.
7 feet tall, one-time WWE wrestler, Seven's own Pat Welsh once calling him
Nathan Jones, known as the Colossus of Bogger Road.
I've got a reputation for kicking off the cell doors. They've demolished it now, and my whole life has taken a complete turnaround.
Putting smiles on faces like only this weekend can. Ned Balm, 7 News.
We're being warned of a whooping cough epidemic sweeping the country. More than 40,000 cases of the potentially fatal disease have been reported so far this year. Babies under 6 months old are most at risk. Adults are recommended to get a booster shot every 10 years. Well, an incredible chapter in the history of Australian radio came to a close today. John Laws hung up his headphones, ending 71 years on air with this sign-off.
Treat with kindness your life, and treat with equal kindness the lives of any people that you happen to encounter. And I'm sure you'll do that. But in the meantime, what do? I say goodbye.
The titan of talkback began his career in 1953, ruling the airwaves of Sydney on 2UE and later 2SM. Dozens of monkeys have made a bid for freedom in South Carolina. 43 escaped a research lab in the small town of Yemassee. Residents have been told to keep their doors and windows locked.
Try to feed them, try to take one as a pet, but just remain where you are inside, somewhere safe.
Authorities are trying to entice them back with food, but so far they've had no luck. There's been an electric shock for Tesla with a drop in sales as more Chinese EVs enter the Australian market. From Ford to Kia, Volvo and Audi, we test drive the latest tech. That's just ahead on 7 News. Sport time now, and our cricketers, Ben, they've hardly been electric.
Yeah, it's been a one-day wipeout. Sarah, g'day everyone. Angst in Adelaide. Say your prayers. The Aussies wrecked by a Pakistan speed demon in the city of churches. Sully, he selected fast-tracked. Does it devalue the Wallabies jersey? Former captain has his say next. Pakistani speed demon Ralph Harris has Australia on the canvas in the second one-dayer, triggering a dramatic collapse at Adelaide Oval. Right now, the visitors are closing in on victory, courtesy of the quick, stunning Pfeiffer, rampaging at a runner ball.
In the city of churches, Pakistan prayed for another choke from the Aussie openers. They were answered. Jake Fraser-McGurk for 13 in the third over.
Real interest there. Crashes into the pads.
Matt Short fared just 9 runs better before Wreck-It Ralph rolled through the middle order. Inglis for 18, Labuschagne just 6. The Aussies spiralling after Smith's dismissal on 35.
Edge there, he's gone, didn't take long.
Finishing 5 for 29, Ralph returned from a spell to inflict more misery.
Stumps everywhere, Harris Ralph destroying the Australians.
Who, with a desperately wagging tail, limped to 163. With ball in hand, they fared no better.
Oh, could be tight if he picks up cleanly. Oh, he did, and it's going to cost him 4 runs.
Pakistan cruising to a decider in Perth on Sunday. Mitch Crone, 7 News.
Day 2 of the Australia A bat-off against India's second 11.
And Constas fails again here at the MCG, out for 3.
After McSweeney fell cheaply yesterday.
Shots. 2 straight, lovely clip off the pads.
Marcus Harris scrapped out a hard-fought 74.
The edge, and he's out. No, he's not. No, he's not. The Indians cannot believe it.
Not always convincing, but after 3 years out of the Test team, he's given selectors something to ponder. They'll get to bat again tomorrow. And the Heat have flown home for tomorrow's historic Gabba clash, desperate to break a 3-game losing streak. Last night in Perth, Charlie Knott's maiden WBBL half-century, not enough to chase down the top-of-the-ladder Thunder, a 19-run loss ahead of their first standalone match at the Gabba.
I'm hopeful that at some stage Cricket Australia will start to think about that concept of playing the women's game before the men, or vice versa, and I think that will actually help step change fan and crowds coming to watch our wonderful women's team.
Tomorrow's grand final rematch is with the Strikers. Well, King Gutho is now Saint Gutho. The Dragons confirmed the signing of the dethroned Eels captain Clint Gutherson for the next 3 years, worth $2.5 million. But the Kings of Parramatta Stadium this weekend are Tongan, even while facing the Kangaroos on Aussie turf.
Pacific Island nations drumming up support. The people's team, Tonga. For those mobbed, Sunday's final means more than a game.
It's bigger than me. It's bigger than my family. It's for our little nation of Tonga.
The focus for those in red or green and gold, Aden Fanua-Blake. His semi-final performance near perfect by a prop forward.
You know, he's a force, and he's a big part of their forward pack.
I felt his runs, I felt his tackles. There was a bit more in it than a usual game.
An historic quadruple header on Sunday at Parramatta's CommBank Stadium, celebrating 4 tests of men's and women's International Rugby League. Just like the Kangaroos, the Jillaroos were humbled by the Kiwis in last year's final, Sunday's decider against the same opponents.
We're up for it, we're really excited. We know that they're the benchmark team for us.
Andrew McKinlay, 7 News.
Former Wallabies captain Stephen Moore has backed the selection of league convert Joseph Sulihi, shooting down suggestions that it devalues the jersey. The 21-year-old will start in the centres against England at Twickenham Sunday with 0 games of professional rugby to his name. Which is different to other code hoppers. No soft launch in Super Rugby. His last 15-a-side game, Australian schoolboys.
We've got a confidence that he'll adapt really well. If it's not well enough, well, at least it's a first step.
It's a baptism of fire, isn't it? But it's great to see him get picked straight away. I think we might as well get on with it and get him out there and exposed to Test rugby. He's clearly a quality athlete and a quality player.
A big call from a former captain. 3 World Cups, 129 tests. Moore has this message to those who think fast-tracking the $5 million man cheapens the jersey.
He's been playing football though, hasn't he? Even though it's been for the Roosters, it's a different code, but you can see the kind of athlete he is. I'm sure he stood out amongst the group to the point where they can't not pick him.
They tend to carry a lot more upright. Contact tends to be a lot more upright. His ability to drop his height and punch through the tackle really well has impressed us.
He's a confident kid. He's very mature for his age. And he's fitted in well. The boys have been getting around him and he's been getting around the boys.
Now it's about getting the fans back around. On a night where both sides unleashed their firepower, power failure stopped the Bullets and United clash with 3 minutes to go.
I just knocked. See, I felt like I was going to do that to your lights, Pete.
The power returned, but the broadcast didn't. Brisbane falling 17 points short against the comp's best defence after a 10-minute delay.
For us to put up 103 points against that defence is a positive on that end of the floor, but 100% we don't want to give up 120.
It's Melbourne's 12th straight win over the Bullets. There we go, a packed Friday night sport.
Thank you, Ben. Checking finance now, and the ASX 200 has closed down just 5 points. All sectors rose except energy. Commonwealth Bank closed at a record high. $1 Australian dollar is currently buying 66.49 US cents. Electric vehicles are back in the fast lane with more than 100 models now available. It comes as Tesla sales drop in Australia as new Chinese brands enter the market.
From flying cars to state-of-the-art scooters, the future of mobility is on full display at the Sydney International EV Auto Show.
You've got every available new SUV on the floor. There's speeches, there's activities, there's go-kart track, and it's a whole family day. If you're into a new EV, this is the place to be.
There's Ford, Kia, Volvo and Audi, a whole lineup of big names showing off the latest and greatest in EV tech. But one of the most prominent makers, Tesla, has actually seen a drop in sales of just over 19% for the last month, year on year. It comes as more and more Chinese brands enter the Australian market. Well, one of them is XPeng, and this is their G6 model. It's actually the long-range version, so it goes 570 kilometres. And when it comes to tech, this has everything. From an intuitive touch screen allowing you to control the heating and cooling, to a voice assistant with an impressive set of skills. Hey XPeng.
Hey.
Can you wind my window down?
The driver's window is open.
Sean White, 7 News.
I don't know about that. It's a lighter take on the week's news. Mark Humphreys takes a look at the very big week that was.
And a big weekend ahead too. Will this heat hang around? I'll have the forecast coming up next. Good evening, Queensland. You're watching 7 News. Checking the weather now. Plenty of cloud around today, which has kept storms in check. In the end, there's some light showers on the radar. They're mostly in the form of virga, or rain that evaporates before hitting the ground. And you can actually see that behind me here. It's this little smudged area on screen. Now, a steamy night under that cloud with Brisbane's minimum of 24.4, the warmest November night since 2008. Tops were cooler than forecast thanks to that cloud, but it was still muggy out there. Ipswich reached a late top of 34 degrees. Now, zooming out, hotter conditions in the clear air further inland with some isolated storms getting going over the Maranoa and Warrego and Darling Downs this evening. If they continue to build, we could get the tail end of that activity in the southeast overnight. Then tomorrow, a change, a trough and low dig in on the coast here, pushing in southeast winds, which should take the edge off a little bit of the heat. We still have a narrow strip of instability along the coast and ranges here, as shown by the blue shade, so you can't rule out a lingering shower or storm there. If you're travelling interstate for the weekend, all pretty settled. Watch for a passing shower in Sydney, dry and comfortable down south. Perth and Adelaide tracking for 24 degrees. In the tropics tomorrow, blue skies as far as the eye can see along the east coast. Cairns and Townsville up to steamy tops of 33. Over southern districts, mostly dry, though you can't rule out some hit and miss showers and storms running from near Emerald down the ranges, possibly affecting the Gympie area later as well, 35 degrees. In the southeast, a possible sprinkle overnight, then partly cloudy and slightly cooler day tomorrow. The odd rogue shower is a chance, but they'll be few and far between. Take a degree or two off overnight, less so during the day, 21 up to 30 in Springwood. If you're hitting the water, southeast winds at 10 to 15 knots on Moreton Bay. So in Brisbane, that possible shower, but really it will be dry most of the time, 23 up to 30, hot but not as nasty as it's been. Into Sunday, not too much change. Another mostly dry top of 30 degrees with a possible late shower. In Ipswich, 32 with a storm more likely late Sunday. Those temperatures gradually dropping just a little bit. On the Gold Coast, a mostly dry weekend, but we're still tracking for an increase in showers and potentially storms around Monday and Tuesday. Sunshine Coasters, wet weather also picks up into the new week, and it could last into the second half of the week with tops hovering around that 30-degree mark and the odd lingering shower or storm. Now let's have a look at those all-important weekend beach conditions. Here's Nathan Fife from Surf Lifesaving Queensland.
Hi Queenslanders, it looks like it's going to be a great weekend on our beaches. Here is your weekend surf report. On the Sunshine Coast this weekend, we'll be expecting 2 foot of swell. Sunday, around 1 foot of swell. Winds are going to change to the northeast, around 6 to 20 knots. So if you're keen to head to the beach, definitely do it before that wind gets up. Best beaches for a surf will be Coolum and Maroochydore, and best beach for a swim, check out Noosa or Mooloolaba. On the Gold Coast, Saturday we'll be expecting around 2 to 3 foot of swell. Winds from the southeast, 6 knots to 15 knots in the afternoon. Sunday, we're expecting 2 to 3 foot. Winds are going to change to that northeasterly. Best beaches on the Gold Coast for a surf will be Burleigh Point and Kira Point, and for a swim will be North Burleigh and Palm Beach. Please be safe, look out for each other, and only swim between those red and yellow flags and between patrol times.
Thanks for that, Nathan. Now to Mark Humphreys with his satirical take on a big week in news.
Donald Trump, a man who was president for 4 years and yet is still incredibly unqualified to be president, will soon be back to making America whatever it was again last time he was president. The victory was not quite a landslide, but his climate policies are likely to result in some. Trump won swing states, including Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Harris won New Hampshire and Minnesota, and Putin is now expected to win eastern Ukraine. For the Harris campaign, there'll be a lot of soul searching. No such problem for the Trump campaign, as they called off the search years ago. World leaders were quick to send messages of congratulations lest Trump should come up with a diminutive nickname for them. French President Emmanuel Macron told Trump he was, quote, ready to work together with your convictions and mine. And indeed, Trump does have convictions, 34 of them in the state of New York. Australia's ambassador to the United States, Kevin Rudd, has deleted several tweets critical of the once and future president. You have to be careful about criticising Trump. The last guy that called Trump America's Hitler ended up as his vice president. Democrats have not taken the loss well, even going so far as to engage in unprecedented behaviour like accepting the election results and conceding defeat. And in a speech at the White House, President Joe Biden promised a smooth, calm, peaceful transition to the crazed madman. He also called for Americans to bring down the temperature, which will be near impossible after Trump leaves the Paris Agreement. This victory makes Donald Trump the first former president to pull off a comeback like this since Grover Cleveland. If you want to know how long ago that was, well, when Grover pulled a shift at the Macca's drive-through window, it was a ride-through window. So what does the Trump presidency hold in store? Every stupid colour you like. No word yet on what's next for Kamala Harris, but her running mate Tim Walz can look forward to a long and prosperous career as the answer to pub trivia questions. And finally, mysterious black balls, which washed up on Sydney beaches last month, have been found to be made up of human faeces, drugs and cooking oils. Or at least that's what one overeager researcher thought they tasted like. The contents make them the worst thing to wash up on an Australian beach since Melissa Caddick's foot, and also the most challenging mystery box ingredients ever to appear on MasterChef. That's the 6:57pm news. I'm Mark Humphreys.
And that is all from us this Friday. Thank you for your company. We'll have updates throughout the evening, but for now, from all the team, good night.
The 7 News app will give you the news you want. Download now.